And welcome back to coverage here of the Players Tour Finals. Marshall Sutcliffe with Paul Cheon. And we are right down the stretch here on day number 2. This is where all of the important slots are decided, Paul. Not only top 8, but also players will be fighting for their top 16 finish to try to qualify for the grand finals a little bit later this year. So these next 2 rounds are going to decide, well, all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's just so much more on the line. Like you said, the ability to qualify for the grand finals means even if you don't win this match, even if you are no longer in top 8 contention, you still have a lot to play for in the next round.
That's right. Also, before we head to our main match, I do have breaking news from the tournament. Alan Wu and Patrick Fernandez, who were 2 of our players at 10-2, there's only 3 of them at this point that had that record. They got paired up against each other, and they have taken an intentional draw. They plan on being in our top 8. So fantastic stuff, taking advantage of having really kind of run away with it with a great record, and they did. Now, in our main match, though, this round, we have, we've got a very stacked field here, but we've got Andrew Baeckstrom playing against Riku Kumagai. I know the chat was loving Riku's mono black deck. Let's head on down and see how this plays out in a potential win-in for top 8.
Yeah, and we've seen both players, of course, given their record, have done a really great job kind of cutting through the field of various reclamation decks. But Riku specifically built his deck to beat Temur Reclamation and 4-color Reclamation. Andrew Baeckstrom also did that, but he's not looking at Temur Reclamation right now. He's looking at a bunch of Gutter Bones and Hunted Nightmares that he has to fight through.
Yeah, he's going to have to find something better to do it with, too. He's looking at a 6-lander here with a Growth Spiral against an aggressive mono black deck. That's just not the kind of hand you want to see.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he might have considered keeping it if he's on the play. And what's funny about that hand is I'm sure all day he's been playing against other Temur Reclamation decks. That you just keep that hand, right?
Yeah.
You have a couple of Cryhomes. It's really hard to ship back a hand when you have a Growth Spiral in your hand.
Mm-hmm.
But in this matchup, you're going to need a few more ways to interact early to really be able to keep up.
Wow, look at this opener here from Kumagai, Paul.
Wow.
It's Gutter Bones into Gutter Bones plus Knight of the Ebon Legion. All of a sudden, there's 5 power on the battlefield, and that is not going to get lower here. This Petty Theft has a lot riding on it at this point.
I mean, honestly speaking, these Reclamation decks, the way that they're configured to really try to beat up on each other, they are pretty much just embarrassing against aggressive decks game 1. I mean, they really don't have too much of a chance outside of their kind of ideal start of Growth Spiral into Wilderness Reclamation.
Yeah, right now Baeckstrom's just hoping that Knight of the Ebon Legion gets activated so that the Petty Theft is even better, but he's going to have to settle for just sending it back post-combat here. And away it goes, but there's the trigger for the Knight of...
Wait, that wasn't end step.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. That was not what BK wanted to do. He meant to wait till the end step so that it wouldn't be on the battlefield. And Riku Kumagai says, thank you, and replays it with his remaining mana. Yikes.
And Riku's just going to go for a lethal attack here. He didn't want to play a Rankle here to run it into a Mystical Dispute. So it looks like he just wants to attack with all of the 1-drops here and pump.
And it looks like the only option here for Baeckstrom is to play a 1/1 Baby Shark, throw it in front of a Gutter Bones, and take nearly lethal anyway.
Yeah, and the thing is now Baeckstrom is down to 2. He's got that Blast Zone in play that can wipe away all the 1-drops in play, but additionally Riku has the Rankle on top of that. So Andrew's not in a position where he can get rid of all the 1-drops and deal with that Wrinkle that he's going to play next turn.
Yeah, this looks like checkmate here from Riku Kumagai. In fact, he's in such an advantaged position that seeing the Blast Zone on the battlefield, he's still like, sure, I'll play another 1-drop right into it. And Andrew Baeckstrom has to scoop them up. That is game number 1. And it was a quick one going to Riku Kumagai. And I'll remind you, these players are sitting at 9-3-0 coming in. So everything on the line for them, no doubt about it. With a victory here, what they're hoping, Paul, is to get paired against. So let's say Riku's able to finish off Andrew Baeckstrom here. That would put him at 10-3. What's his ideal situation for the next round?
So what he's really looking to do is get paired against another player who's sitting at 10-3. The magic number for this event, after asking a bunch of different people who know all this pairings math, including Rich Hagan, we were basically told the magic number for this event is 31 points. which means if you have 10 wins, 3 losses, and 1 draw, you are basically locked for the top 8. Meaning, if you win this match, you get that 10th match, and you're really just crossing your fingers and hoping you get paired against another 10-3 to draw in. Now, of course, there might be a chance you get paired down against somebody who's X4, in which case you do have to play it out. But of course, winning here puts you in an excellent position because there's going to be a bunch of other people sitting at X3 that's going to want to draw with you.
So that's the hope and the prayer from the players in the feature this round, meaning that, potentially speaking, this is a winning in for top 8. That they do need to get that pairing that you wanted, but the majority of people who finish this round with that record will receive such a pairing. So that puts them in a very good position to be in the top 8. And Riku Kumagai finds himself just 1 win away now, with Andrew Baeckstrom really just having got ran over in that first game, looking to take advantage of his sideboard to help him out here in game number 2.
Yeah, the biggest thing that told me that 10-3-1 was a lock was when I discovered that Alan Wu chose to draw in this round, right? Mm-hmm. There's no way that they draw it. They don't know that they are 100% in the last round with the loss. So
that's right.
So that was a fast game.
Yeah, we blinked on that one, and it was Riku Kumagai just flooding the board with 1-mana creatures. In fact, he never played anything that cost more than 1 that game, did he?
Yeah, I mean, he had the backup plan in case Baeckstrom had the 4th land to blow up the Blast Zone to get the 1-drops, but no, it was just Knight of the Ebon Legions and Gutter Bones. Yep,
sometimes that works. And speaking of, there is a Knight of the Ebon Legion, but this one is going to get thrown into the glass casket, and it's stuck underground. There's another replacement, though, so at least a bit of pressure here for Kumagai. Of course, Andrew Baeckstrom going to be happy to be on the play here with Uro in hand. Back up to 21 he goes, getting that game plan moving forward. Ooh, there's Wilderness Wreck, too.
Yeah, this is kind of the start that Andrew Baeckstrom needs. Of course, after sideboard, the thing is, these decks are already configured to basically try to beat on each other. After sideboard, you're typically going to see a lot of sideboard cards for these aggressive matchups because they're really tough to win game 1. And by having the glass casket into the Euro, also, of course, being on the play, I mean, Andrew has a much better shot this game of winning.
Now, there is the Hunted Nightmare, which I have to say is Riku Kumagai's signature card here. This is not a card that has seen much play and really kind of surprised a lot of people when they saw it in his list, mainly because it seems to be replacing Rotting Regisaur somehow, but it's been doing really good work for Riku.
Yeah, it's been extremely impressive. I mean, come on. You give another creature death touch, but who in this format play? When do you ever see 2 creatures on the battlefield, right? It's basically unblockable in this metagame.
Yeah.
So at that point, it's just all about sizing. Also, the metagame has shifted with a lot of people playing cards like Brazen Borrower, 2 to 3 copies. So that's a way for people to fight the Rotting Regisaurs and kind of make it so that you're kind of bleeding away cards by waiting for the trigger and discarding a card, etc. Also, the 4-color decks have access to Solar Blaze and Justice Strike, and well, guess what? Hunted Nightmare just does a really good job of kind of fighting through all those cards.
Kumagai, with a little bit of a pause here, he does have access to Heartless Act, which could allow him to push through the maximum damage here, though as it stands, Baeckstrom's still not in a very good position, even with this 3/3 Shark.
Yeah, Baeckstrom has access to a ton of mana here, but still needs to find some kind of action spell here to be able to kind of stave off what Riku has going on right now.
Looks like Riku is going to use a Heartless Act to kill the Shark. It's a really interesting decision here because you can see another copy of Hunted Nightmare in hand for Riku Kumagai, and given the fact that Baeckstrom has kind of awkward situation here, regardless of how things play out, given the pump ability on the Knight, it's tempting to just say, okay, if you want to throw away this Shark, which is exactly what happened here, it does, though, mean that Kumagai does not get to play the second Hunted Nightmare. But it does mean that Andrew just had to use that Shark as basically a tempo play, just here, tap 3 lands.
Right. Although it also makes sense why Riku would not want to play a second Hunted Nightmare. The reason being is there is a Blast Zone on the battlefield, and with the Wilderness Reclamations in play, Baeckstrom could put 2 counters on the Blast Zone here, and also activate it on the same turn. So had Riku gone ahead and played the second Hunted Nightmare, he'd be in a tough spot because he would just be 2-for-1ing himself by losing both of his Hunted Nightmares.
Awkward triple Heartless Act now for Kumagai. This is not going to leave him with much pressure. He's forced to just send in the clowns here, both creatures attacking. This ostensibly will get Andrew Baeckstrom to use the Blast Zone. Oh, but he has Brazen Borrower here as well. Interesting. Because the Blast Zone is up to 3 counters now.
Yeah, but Andrew's still at a pretty healthy 16 life, so he's going to wait to see if maybe Riku overextends a little bit and just kind of make it very awkward for Riku. By bouncing the 3-drop, you know, Riku can only really play 1 threat at a turn. He doesn't have the mana to pump the Knight of the Ebon Legion. If Riku goes ahead and does pump Knight of the Legion, you're pretty happy, right? You spent your entire turn and all you're going to have is just a 3-4 on the battlefield, which is a lot more manageable with what Andrew has.
So the tempo plays for Baeckstrom were Chump Block with the Shark to force the pump on the Knight of the Ebon Legion turn prior, and now Petty Theft to bounce the Hunted Nightmare back into hand. Kumagai has to consider whether he'd prefer pumping or not. You know, the argument for pumping is that, well, your opponent has a Blast Zone on 3 anyway, so, you know, where are you trying to go with getting Hunted Nightmares back on the battlefield? The downside to it, of course, is that he's kind of all in on this Knight of the Ebon Legion, and it's hard to imagine that it's going to be able to get the job done on its own, though he does opt to pump here, Paul.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I mean, this Knight of the Ebon Legion, it can very easily attack through this Uro, right? Now it's a 3-4, so a single pump makes it a 6-7. Additionally, he does have the Heartless Axe to kill a potential Uro that Baeckstrom might play. So yeah, I mean, it sounds like he is just committing to putting as much pressure on as possible with this Knight of the Ebon Legion, given that the Blast Zone is sitting on 3 here.
Yeah, to me, this feels like a tough situation for Kumagai because there are cards that kind of blow out this idea, you know, any type of bounce effect. You know, another Brazen Borrower to Fairy or something, sending that Knight of the Ebon Legion back really does have Riku at square 0. That being said, I don't know if I like the other line that much better either, of just running my Hunted Nightmares into a Blast Zone that's already on 3. So I kind of see where you're going here, Kumagai.
This is the best 1-drop ever. It could go all the way, right?
I mean, I said it would be difficult for it to, but I did not say impossible.
It's a 4-5.
This is incredible. It is lethal next turn, and right now, Baeckstrom needs to find some way to deal with it, and he finds Solar Blaze? Really?
That is not going to do it. The sizing of the creatures in Riku's deck, Kitesail Freebooter, Knight of the Ebon Legion, Hunted Nightmare. Good luck, Solar Blaze.
How many cards does Baeckstrom have in his yard? Not enough. Wow.
Is he just dead?
He's just dead.
He can't even block. He doesn't have enough cards to get back the Uro.
No, he couldn't even fire off the Solar Blaze just to get the Uro live.
Riku has 7 cards in hand.
This is incredible. This Knight of the Ebon Legion actually is going to go the distance. Wow, I must have offended it with my comment. It goes all the way.
Man.
Riku Kumagai puts himself in absolutely fantastic position for a top 8 here. Just needs to find a draw in the next round, and Kumagai will be in with mono black aggro, much to the joy of our chat, Paul. They love this deck.
I mean, much to the joy of just anybody, really. I think people are just excited to see something outside of what kind of we expected being the big decks coming into this tournament, and really just an impressive showing. Every time we've seen him on camera, he is just completely stomped whatever Reclamation deck he's been paired against. And I mean, you can see why. Like, the moment he saw the Blast Zone get pumped up to 3 counters, he's like, okay, well, this is my game plan.
Yep.
I'm going to stick with it. You know, I'm going to make you deal with this. I know this is risky, but he didn't really have any other great options, right? So he just kind of went with it, and he got there.
Reclamation Slayer Riku Kumagai has brought the right tool for the job, it seems, this weekend. You know, given that the expectation was a lot of Teamer Reclamation and 4-color Reclamation, and given that that expectation did come to fruition here, a huge percentage of our field are playing those type of decks. Hey, he's got Excalibur, right? He's got the exact. I mean, that Knight of the Ebon Legion went the distance all by itself. He had 7 cards in his hand.
My God. Yes, yeah, that was incredible. Like, his draw that game didn't even seem especially great. right? But I mean, to be fair, Andrew Baeckstrom had a ton of mana. If he just drew any one of his mana sinks, right, he would have just won that game, but he just was unable to find any of them.
That's right. All right, well, we're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll have more action here from round number 13 from the Players Tours final. We'll see you in just a bit. We're in the finals here of Mythic Championship 6. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe with Paul Cheon. Take a look at the trophy there as we work our way back into the feature match area. And we've got two very, very good players playing very, very well in the finals. And of course, if you thought for 1 second that this was going to go to anything other than 5 games, you were wrong. We're in game number 5. Paulo has Ether Gust, and he can just get that Krasis out of there, and that will actually allow him to attack Andre's life total down to 13 while killing Oko.
But I think this is pretty much all Paulo has.
That was kind of it.
Right? Strasky is still sitting at 13 life, and he just has a questing beast that Strasky needs to deal with.
Paulo is completely out of gas here. He has 1 card left in hand. It's a land. Can you imagine sitting in Andre Strasky's seat right now? He was staring down loss in the last game. He fought his way all the way back to win it. And now he's playing against somebody that when he first met him, he literally said, "You're my hero. Like, you're the person I watch on this very stream, and I want to be like you." And he's on the verge of beating him in the finals of a Mythic Championship.
I mean, again, this is literally what you're dreaming about.
Andre Strasky wins Mythic Championship 6. Congratulations, Andre.
Oh my goodness, what a turnaround. I mean, I thought Paulo had it. I thought Paulo had it in game 4.
I did too. Unbelievable. He stuck right in there, never gave up, and found the right lines. Andre played so beautifully here in the finals and in the whole top 8. A well-earned victory for Mythic Championship 6 winner, Andre Strasky.
Oh my goodness.
And welcome back to coverage here of the Players Tour Finals. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. I'm with Paul Cheon, and we're in the penultimate round here on day number 2. We just saw Riku Kumagai pick up the victory there and put himself in prime position for a top 8. Just needs to find an opponent with the same record in the next round, do the old intentional draw, and Kumagai with mono black will find himself in the top 8. And frankly, even if that doesn't happen, it feels like he's unstoppable anyway. Just like, yeah, bring them all on, you know, just give me another teamer player and I'll chew him up and spit him right out on my way to the top 8. And we've seen a lot of that here. The decks, Paul, that were particularly geared to beat the teamer deck seem to be doing just that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think basically the reason to play a bunch of these really, really aggressive strategies was to basically hope to get paired against only teamer reclamation decks. And if that did happen to you, you have a really, really great record. There's a lot of these decks that really just got paired against teamer and have fantastic records. But if you got paired against not teamer reclamation, you're probably struggling.
That's right.
I think a lot of these aggressive decks that we've seen at the top, we've seen in the feature matches too, where yeah, they played against teamer rec, and their decks did basically what they were meant to do.
That's right. And these players interestingly had the exact same idea, Christoph Prince versus Pyotr Glogowski, but they also played Teamer Rec hoping to get paired against other Teamer Rec players. They're both on 4-color reclamation, stretching their mana base for the tools to beat the mirror.
Yeah, and they have an incredible record here against reclamation. Prince is 9-0. Excuse me, he's 7-1 against reclamation decks. Glogowski is 6-1 against reclamation.
Wow, really?
They have a combined 13-2 record against the various reclamation decks in the tournament.
And you can see right now, we're just coming in on game number 1, and right in his opening hand for Christoph Prince, we've got Negate Dovin's Veto just sitting there.
Yeah, imagine if he was going up against Kumagai. Actually, he did go up against Kumagai earlier, and this is pretty much what you saw. Right. He has a handful of negates and just lost a bunch of efficiently costed black creatures.
These players with excellent records late. Christoph Prince is actually the other player with 10 and 2. We mentioned earlier that Alan Wu and Patrick Fernandez had taken an intentional draw. They were the other two 10 and 2 players, and Christoph is the third. He's actually the only other player with that record. So he's what we call playing down. He's playing a player with a worse record than him. In this case, though, he did get a little unlucky. He drew Pyotr Glogowski on 9 and 3, so he's got his hands full, no doubt about it.
Right, but Prince, of course, is in a much better position here, even with a loss. He could just get paired against another 10 and 3 and draw his way into the top 8. Meanwhile, for Glogowski, he must win this game.
Right, Glogowski is really trying to play to put himself in that position where he can have a 10 and 3 record going into the last round, and if he gets paired up with somebody who's also 10 and 3, he could draw right into top 8. So huge pressure on Glogowski, particularly this game. But I'll also mention, Paul, that this tournament isn't just about top 8. The top 16 matters as well, as it can get you an invite to the season grand finals. And, that's a big deal. I mean, that's going to be a big tournament that's going to happen later this year. And these players are certainly going to have that in mind as well.
And given Prince's record, given that he started off undefeated day one, I would imagine that he has an extremely high likelihood of making the top 16, even if he loses these last 2 rounds. But as you can see here, Glogowski in a position here where he was not able to hit land drop number 5, so he just had to kind of run out the Uro here and just kind of hoping for the best and hoping that Christoph won't punish him too badly. But Christoph just kind of has it all here. He's got the Wilderness Reclamation, plus the Expansion Explosion, plus Veto and Negate here to protect this Wilderness Reclamation.
Well, it doesn't have anything to do with the mana just yet. He's going to be patient and make sure he can protect that explosion. But you know how it is. Yeah. If he ends up getting that, it's going to be ridiculous. He's going to draw 6 or 7 cards.
Right. At this point, Glogowski just has to keep trying to jam threats and hope one of them sticks. He's so behind now. You just have to go for it.
And unfortunately for him, that is not going to happen. Negate is going to hit Wilderness Reclamation, and we're going to see fireworks here now for Christoph Prince.
Yeah, you're going to see an explosion here for probably... How much mana are we looking at here? 14 mana, so he's probably going to explosion for at least 6, giving him the option of keeping up Dovin's Veto plus potentially another counterspell. Could also see him just go Expansion Explosion for 8 and making sure that he has Dovin's Veto mana up.
Yeah, you know how this goes, Paul. It just they feed into each other. You explosion for a bunch, and then you find another explosion, and next thing you know, your opponent's dead.
Right.
Huge play here for Christoph Prince to try to knock Pyotr Glogowski down into 9 and 4 record, and put Christoph just having really run away with the tournament here. If Christoph wins this match, he will be the only player with 33 match points left in the tournament, and that of course would lock up top 8. And right now Christoph is in a position to almost be in top 8 now.
Yeah, we're probably going to be seeing a concession fairly shortly here from Glogowski. He is just way too far behind here. We got the Reclamation. I mean, oftentimes when you do resolve that Expansion Explosion, even if it's not for lethal, if you can get that off for 4 or 5, it's usually the game.
Right. And, this is why, even though if you just look at the hand really quickly, it's not actually that great for Christoph Prince, but you see cards like Castle Vantris, you see cycling from Ketria Triome. There's just a lot of card selection available to the Temur Reclamation player, where by the next time Christoph untaps, whether it's from a Temur Rec or for his turn, he's going to have action in hand and find what he needs.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, Christoph is nearly tutoring every turn.
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
He has the ability to try for 6 cards every single turn. Additionally, right now, because he kept the Ketria Triome in hand, he can also just make a giant Shark Typhoon token here at end of turn.
So he's going to definitely have that available to him. And then he's put Kenrith the Return King on top of the library as well. And again, it's hard to imagine, especially with the draw that Glogowski's had here. He's got Scorching Dragonfire in his hand. It's just misery.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're just going to see a full Shark Typhoon for 7 here. It's not like he has any counterspell backup. Not really sure why he would want to keep up mana. So yeah, it looks like he's going for Typhoon for 7 here. can also play a Kenrith and
Haste it
that would
up.
be very close to lethal.
Yeah, it would be 12, and then is there green mana around? There is some green
There is.
mana, yeah.
But
It-
but if you just try to run out of Teferi, there's almost no way you can lose. So now we can go Kenrith, haste, and get in for 12,
Yep.
and then untap all your mana, draw a bunch of cards.
Yep.
Kenrith then does its best Spectral Sailor impersonation,
Yeah, it does.
and more.
But wait, there's more. And that is game number 1 going to Christoph Prince. This has really been Christoph's tournament, having absolutely crushed day 1 and kept up the pace here on day 2. Very impressive at 10-2 coming in against an extremely tough field. You know, Christoph's been playing for a while. As a Magic player, started playing back in 2011, in fact, a year before Glogowski started. But still, this is impressive. I mean, this is a very, very tough field, and Christoph has kind of just sliced right through it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think just kind of the narrative of this event is, hey, you want to play Team of Reclamation? Probably want to be playing 4-color Team of Reclamation if this is the field that you're expecting, because both
Right.
of these players on the 4-color variant, even Andrew Baeckstrom, he was making a really deep run, had a fantastic record against other Reclamation decks. And that's because of the power of Teferi Time Raveler and also Dovin's Veto.
Yeah, it is funny. The further you go down the road of trying to make your matchup as good as it can be against other teamer decks, it really does punish you against the aggressive decks, and it feels very swingy. And especially if our top 8 ends up featuring some of those aggressive decks, like perhaps the one that we saw from Riku or Michael Jacobs. I'm really curious to see if a few of those can get into the top 8 and just throw a wrecking ball into these, you know, teched out, tuned out teamer 4-color lists.
Right, absolutely. And, you know, but that's just kind of how metagames evolve, right? Everybody pushes a little too far in one direction because they want to one-up each other. And then all of a sudden, the window gets opened up for something like an aggressive strategy to potentially take it all down.
That's right, yeah. And you do see that time and time again. Tap lands for both players to kick things off here in game number 2. Looks like Glogowski had to mulligan here.
Not gonna lie, this has also happened to me. I gave this deck, I took this deck out for a spin, and got a lot of multiple Triome hands with Growth Spiral in hand. So sometimes not gonna be able to get that Growth Spiral off on turn 2.
Yeah, a little bit rough. Glogowski is just going to play a Plains here and pass the turn back. This is going to make life a little bit tricky here for Christoph Prince, as he has to respect some counters. Particularly Dispute, I would assume. That said, Growth Spiral in hand for Glogowski looks pretty good here. Wow, triple Triome. Your move.
Yeah, and a lot of people might be looking at Christoph's hand and go, well, you know, he's got 5 lands. Why is he playing out this Triome? Well, when you play this matchup, you are not looking to miss any of your land drops for at least the first 6 to 7 turns of the game. So you just kind of want to play out all your tap lands so that later on, when you do get into those counter fights, you're not stuck with an awkward Triome in your hand that you wish you played earlier.
Yeah, really awkward there for Christoph Prince as well, because he actually had Mystical Dispute that could have countered the Growth Spiral, which he may have been interested in doing, but if he would have done so, he would have left himself without the ability to even bluff countering Wilderness Reclamation, and he didn't want to do that, so he just said, sure, you got it. Meanwhile, Pyotr Glogowski's mana is building up on the other side, and Christoph is bluffing that counterspell in that scenario. So the good news is that Pyotr didn't even have the option on it, as he hasn't drawn a copy of Wilderness Reclamation just
Ooh.
yet.
This is big. This is the tech card. We've seen a lot of these Reclamation decks play for this matchup. Spectral Sailor, just cheap enough where it's very easy to play around the counterspell suite that the Reclamation decks can have. You know, very easy to play around cards like Mystical Dispute, and really forces your opponent to do something, because if not, the Spectral Sailor will slowly run away with the game by just kind of grinding out the opponents through card advantage.
That's right. I love this little bit of technology, and Glogowski is somehow applying massive pressure to Christoph Prince, even though it doesn't look like it on board.
And Glogowski here, even with another card specifically for the sideboard, from the sideboard, commenced the end game.
Oh, very, very nice.
which is really, really nice. Now Glogoski with the Teferi on the stack doesn't have a counterspell, so probably running out this Commence the Endgame. Christoph will then bounce this giant token, but there's that Spectral Sailor to be able to finish off the Teferi. So now curious to see if Christoph is going to use the Petty Theft on Brazen Borrower to keep that Teferi in play for a turn.
Yeah, it looks like he had the window to do so right away, has decided not to, at least just yet. I wonder if he'd prefer to have that Shark sitting back on defense.
Right. Yeah, no, that's an excellent point.
I mean,
Probably,
I get it. It's hard to give up 2 damage, you know?
Yeah, well, it probably would have been better to run out the Teferi, see what happens, then figure out whether or not you want to attack.
Exactly. So now he's got to burn a Petty Theft to make sure that Teferi stays on the battlefield, but there's an opposing Teferi now for Glogoski. He gets to send that Shark packet into deeper waters, and they've both got a Teferi on 1. And interestingly, no Wilderness Reclamation here for Glogoski, but Christoph did draw 1 in a situation where, you know, it's being shut down for the most part.
Yeah, Christoph does have Castle Vantress in hand, so he can start scrying, use the mana that he has for scrying. He also has a Shark Typhoon in hand, which he can use to make a token end of turn to try to put pressure on that Teferi Time Raveler. So pretty good opportunity here to run out the Wilderness Reclamation and then use the mana to make a big token end of turn.
Yeah, even if it's not optimal, you know, the Wilderness Reclamation in a spot like this, still having uses for it really does add up over the course of the game, especially when neither player has an actual attacking board state as it sits.
Yeah, and this is also why Glogoski chose not to run out of Spectral Sailor. He's looking to cycle a Shark Typhoon here to try to get this Teferi off the battlefield. I wonder if Christoph is considering using Petty Theft to just bounce Teferi Time Raveler from Glogoski's side of the battlefield. Although he doesn't actually have a counter spell to counter it if Glogoski chooses to play it again next turn.
Yeah, if that's the case, then perhaps it's better to just wait.
Right.
So he also didn't play Castle Vantress here. So his idea is to cycle the Shark Typhoon. Is that the plan?
Yeah, maybe he wants to hide the fact that he has a Castle Vantress because he just knows that there's almost no chance that he's going to be scrying. Mm-hmm. Although that's a little strange because you don't know for sure if Glogoski has the Shark Typhoon there.
Right. As it turns out, he did. So now Shark Typhoon against Shark Typhoon. And thanks to the Teferi sitting there, the big 4/4 Shark gets to nom 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 here, and away goes the little 2/2. That worked out well for Prince.
Yeah, we're in an interesting spot now where both players are just kind of playing a tap-out control strategy now with dueling Teferis on both sides. So just trying to put as much pressure as they can onto the battlefield because they can't really do anything at instant speed.
I kind of like this, actually. Like, you know, it's like you take a deck that was designed to be played at instant speed and then just put an arbitrary rule that says you may not do so. It's like, oh.
We're going to just call it the Teferi rule. Just 2 Teferis on both sides. This will make the match go faster. Please just try to figure out what to do now. Thank you.
I like it. This is a good way to get ahead, by the way. If you want to be on board and doing things on the board, an Uro Titan of Nature's Wrath is a great way to get things rolling. So that thing's going to get cast from hand. I don't believe he can bring it back just yet, although I may be wrong. He did play an untapped land there.
Yeah, it looks like he's going through the graveyard. So it looks like he had just enough. Yeah, just enough.
Mm-hmm, exactly the right amount. So beautiful here from Glogoski. Now he says, look, I'm the one who has something going on here. You have to deal with what I'm doing. Now, the good news for Christoph is that he just found Expansion Explosion.
Interesting. Okay. So he had so Christoph had several options here. The other line would have been to bounce Teferi.
Don't worry.
And then with Brazen Borrower, float a bunch of mana, then cast in a huge explosion to kill off Uro. But
it looks like he's doing the reverse, yeah.
Right, exactly.
So he kills Teferi with the Expansion Explosion, and then ostensibly will use Brazen Borrower to bounce Uro, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, this does make sense given that he doesn't actually have a hard counter to, again, deal with that Teferi from to prevent that Teferi from landing again. So yeah, this does make a lot of sense. He would have had to discard a bunch of cards anyway. So yeah, now I mean Piotr is, I want to say, very behind. He doesn't have the Teferi in play. Basically, that one Dovin's Veto in hand has just been blanked. So
yeah, the mirror tech doing what it does. You know, it's been overstated in the past how good Teferi is versus this deck, but it is excellent. It doesn't win you the game simply by resolving it, but if you can keep it on the battlefield for multiple turns, it gives you a lot of breathing room that you can use in the way that Christoph Prince has to maneuver into a much better position.
So it looks like Glogowski's just going to go for an explosion here on Teferi, and probably going to do it to play around Mystical Dispute. Now, Christoph can counter this, but it would come at a really huge cost.
Yeah.
He would need to Mystical Dispute and then copy it with Expansion Explosion.
Yeah, that's really tough. So instead, he's going to cycle a Triumph and try to hit a Dovin's Veto or a Negate here, it looks like.
Yeah, Dovin's Veto, Negate. I'm not sure if he kept any copies of Ether Gust in, which would also do it.
Right. Yeah, I think his plan was just to cast one of these Brazen Borrowers, but this really has put him to the test. This explosion killing Teferi would be a game changer. So let's see if he can hit off of this Triumph. He cannot. He finds another Triumph with it, and Teferi is gone on both sides. So now both players have the green light to do whatever they want, assuming that they can get it through their opposing counterspells. But Wilderness Reclamation is only on one player's side, and that's Christoph Prince. Let's see if he can take advantage.
Not a whole lot here. Christoph does have the Expansion Explosion, but now the Dovin's Vetoes in Glogowski's hand has been unlocked here. So the only really great option that Christoph has here is continue to develop his draw with Castle Vantress, and then maybe also try to apply some pressure with those Brazen Borrowers.
Yeah, I like that plan, because you do have to assume that Glogowski has a couple of counters in hand at least, given that basically the entirety of this game has been played with Teferi out, so they would have just been rotting in hand this whole time.
Right. Christoph could technically, with that free mana, could just run out one of these Brazen Borrowers.
Interesting. He's going to go for Mystical Dispute on a Sailor, but Glogowski actually has 3 mana, so he's really going to find out a lot about what's going on in Glogowski's hand right now.
Oh, yeah, and Glogowski sees what's up and has to let it get countered, because he knows if he pays for the mana, that's a big explosion right at your face.
Oh, what a great play by both players, to be honest. Christoph Prince recognizing that would pave the way for, draw 8 or whatever, and he was fine throwing away a card for that opportunity, but Glogowski very cleverly says, no, I'm not going to pay the 3 mana just because I have it up and then get blown out here. I'm going to let this one go.
Yeah.
Very high level play from both players here. Now we see Urotite of Nature's Wrath once again hit the battlefield, if only for a moment.
And I think we're kind of at nearly a standstill.
Yeah, the cards I'm looking at are those Brazen Borrowers, right? Like, if Prince gets 2 Brazen Borrowers down and they just get to start slamming, that's going to add up really quickly and force Glogowski to do something.
Right. And, I mean, Piotr has 1 Borrower off to the side.
Oh, that was awkward.
Yeah, he scryed first, then ran out the Borrower. Although maybe Christoph is also okay with just, like, not having to think about Mystical Disputes, but at the same time, I mean, at this point, you have so much mana available to you. You should really try your best to kind of avoid getting blown out by Mystical Dispute, because it's pretty easy to play around.
Yeah, and even a card like a Brazen Borrower can actually go a long way, particularly if your opponent draws another Teferi or something along those lines. If you have a 3/1 flyer out and your opponent doesn't have anything, you can actually apply pressure to it. So perhaps a misstep there from Christoph, not doing that in reverse order, but we'll see.
Interestingly enough, Piotr has that Kenrith in his hand, and Christoph doesn't really have any way to stop this Kenrith from doing what it wants. He's got those Expansion Explosions, but Piotr has 2 copies of Dovin's Veto to protect that Kenrith from anything Christoph could try to point at it.
Chat was wondering why you would have a card like Negate in your deck if you could have another slot for Dovin's Veto, like in the case of Piotr Glogowski. Do you have any thoughts on that, Paul?
Yeah, Well, the thing is, with this deck, it's a 4-color mana base. Sometimes you just don't have enough white sources available in play, right? So often there could be a situation where you want to counter multiple spells at once, and you might not be able to cast multiple Dovin's Vetoes because of the lands that you had to fetch with your Fabled Passages. Oftentimes you're not finding a plains there. You want to get your islands and forests to make sure you have the appropriate colors to escape Uro. Additionally, I mean, there might be those instances where you play against somebody where they're like, well, they don't have Dovin's Veto mana up, right? But if you have the negate, they're like, oh, well, okay, well, they might still have the negate, right? And they're so close in terms of what they can accomplish. Maybe Christoph decided that he kind of just wanted to have that one negate in his list as well.
Wow, another land off the top here for Christoph Prince. And once again, it's Pyotr Glogowski who has maneuvered himself into a position where he has Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath. And yeah, there's been a Wilderness Reclamation on the battlefield for numerous turns now for Christoph Prince. He has yet to be able to find a way to capitalize on it. Even with the Castle Vantress being activated, he has Expansion Explosion, but we see another copy of Dovin's Veto in hand for Glogowski. It won't be able to resolve.
Yeah, and again, this is the power. This is the power. This is one of the big reasons. It's not just a parry. Like, Dovin's Veto is such a huge reason why this matchup all of a sudden gets turned around. Because before, you can be like, okay, I have Expansion Explosion, I got negate backup. If my opponent's got a counter, it's okay, I still have this negate backup. But now your opponent can just have one card, right?
Yep.
You can just have Dovin's Veto, and you're just like, oh, well, I guess I'll just wait to draw another one. So,
and there we go.
Yeah, and now this negate does absolutely nothing. Imagine if that Dovin's Veto was a negate. This Expansion Explosion would have resolved.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Crazy. So we see Christoph Prince doing his best to play around the counterspells there, but he knows I cannot play around Dovin's Veto. That's just a card that if Glogowski has it, then he has it, and he did. And now Christoph Prince is desperate for something amazing off the top of the library. Now, I'll mention it again, he has Castle Vantress, so he does have multiple looks at finding another copy of Expansion Explosion or something powerful.
I think it's Kenrith time.
Uh-oh. Big Daddy Kenrith on the stack, and that's actually lethal. 6, 11, 12, 13, 14 with haste. And that is going to be game number 2 going to Pyotr Glogowski, who looked ahead early, then really looked like he fell behind. He just somehow beat a player with an active Wilderness Reclamation for like 6 turns in a row, and he never had one of his own, and he just won. Nice.
Yeah, at one point, Christoph was the one that had the Teferi on the battlefield, right? He was the only one with the Teferi. Pyotr decided to get rid of the Teferi with that explosion, was able to find an extra copy of Dovin's Veto, which gave him the second counter that he needed to be able to deal with both of the Expansion Explosions in Christoph's hand.
I mean, I've covered enough of Canister's matches now to know that he's an excellent player, but that was excellent. He was way behind. I don't know how he won that game.
Yeah, I mean, I think both players played it fairly well there. I mean, Christoph going for that Mystical Dispute, right? And the turn when Glogowski going for the Spectral Sailor, thinking, well, yeah, this is pretty safe. And then I think Glogowski may have realized what was up there and was like, wait, maybe I should have waited on the Spectral Sailor, right?
Right.
You had so much mana available. Perhaps it was better just to wait for the next turn and just play it when you have 12 mana untapped.
All right, game number 3 between these two 4-color Reclamation players. They do not have the same record as each other, so that's something that you should take note of. Pyotr Glogowski just won game number 2 while being significantly far behind because he's in many ways fighting for his top 8 life here. If he can pick up a win against Christoph Prince, he may be able to just draw in with a pairing against a similar record or same record player in the last round. If he loses here, his chances are pretty much done.
Wow, and look at Christoph here. He opted to just go for the Uro here. Of course, the combination is not, the likelihood is not super high, but Pyotr could then responded with a Growth Spiral into the Wilderness Reclamation. I'm not sure if Christoph's been looking at how Pyotr has sideboarded in this matchup, but we have seen that Pyotr does like to take out lots of copies of Wilderness Reclamation. So perhaps Christoph thought, this is actually a reasonable window to just go for this and make sure I don't miss my land drops, because that's how we've seen a lot of these players lose this matchup.
That's
It's
right.
Missing your land drops, it's so important.
Yeah, impressive from Christoph there again. That was a window that you could easily submit to your own fears, right? You could just say, it's just too risky. But like you said, we haven't seen any Wilderness Reclamations post-board from Pyotr Glugowski. And if that's the case, pedal to the metal, right? Take advantage of it. One of the big advantages that these type of decks get is that people play around the potential things that could be there. If you don't think they have it, you're good to go.
And Christoph still missing these land drops here, and now Glugowski with the active Spectral Sailor.
Yeah, he will not be attacking with that for respect of Shark Typhoon. And in order for Christoph Prince to keep up, he's going to have to try to find a land next turn and then maybe another one with a Growth Spiral to catch back up. It's Justice Strike off the top, and there's a Fabled Passage as well.
Hey, you know what? Justice Strike is an answer to Spectral Sailor.
It is.
So you might see that happen when Glugowski goes for the card draw here. Could also just go for it maybe at the end of Pyotr's turn.
All right, Christoph is going to attack with the Shark here for a couple of damage, still facing down that Spectral Sailor. He's going to want to take that out as quickly as he can so that Glugowski can't get too much advantage. I mean, it already feels bad when somebody plays a card, draws a card off of it, and then you use a card to kill it. But as we've seen, Spectral Sailor can do a whole lot more work than that.
All right, the battle for Spectral Sailor begins. It looks like we're going to see an expansion here. Copying Negate, countered Negate. Oh, copying Justice Strike.
Sure. Similar effect.
Same thing, yeah.
Yep. And there it goes. Spectral Sailor sails into the sunset. Only one card off of it, or did he even get any? Yeah, he did. He has one trigger on the stack still to draw a card. It's kind of hard to see because we have the...
Ooh, what a card off the top here, though, for Pyotr Glugowski. Teferi Time Raveler?
Ooh, that is the name of the game. One of the big reasons to stretch your mana is to try to beat the opposing Reclamation players, and Teferi Time Raveler gives you a big advantage on that.
Oh, wow, that was huge.
Boy, Glugowski, with his back against the wall, he was down a game and fighting for his top 8 life. I mean, this is, you know, with 3 losses, picking up that 4th loss is going to put you in a very tough position to be able to make top 8, but picking up a win might get you right into the top 8 depending on who you get paired against in the last round. It's a huge swing for him and a weird position for Christoph Prince to be in. At 10-2, Christoph could very easily lose this match and then just get paired up against another 10-3 player and just draw in anyway.
Right.
Totally different incentives for these two players here.
Yeah, Pyotr has to win, and Christoph, I would say, has an extremely high chance of making the top 8, even with a loss here.
Yeah, I can picture them, you know, I picture Christoph like he's got a sandwich in his hand, he's eating chips, he's, you know, talking on the phone and kind of playing a little arena because he's like, I'm probably good. Meanwhile, Pyotr Glugowski's like biting his nails, leaned forward, sweating, you know, this is a huge match for him.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen very few emotes from Pyotr this game, just saying.
Oh, he's all business, isn't he?
Yeah.
There's also a chance that Christoph turned them off.
You are correct.
We are viewing it from his viewpoint, and I'll tell you what, if I got paired against Canister, the very first thing I would do is turn off emotes. All right, both
Pyotr,
players with Teferi now.
Pyotr really wanted an untapped land there when he got that Uro into play to be able to have access to Dovin's Veto, but he did not. So that gives Christoph the opportunity here to resolve that Teferi, bounce the Uro, and you know, now we have a game again. I mean, Pyotr is up on lands.
He
does have a Castle Vantress, but yeah, that was very big.
Right, because the difference was being able to use Veto on a very important spell from your opponent versus Veto's dead now, at least for the foreseeable future.
Exactly.
I mean, what a swing.
But Pyotr is continuing to hit his land drops. He is up like 5 lands on Christoph here.
Yeah, definitely, and looking to take advantage of that. Also has a backup Teferi in case this one were to go away. Although now that I say that, Christoph has 2 backup Teferis. But Christoph also has Expansion Explosion.
He could go for the explosion for 3 here. Just completely tap out. Does he have enough? No,
Is he
actually
missing a
doesn't have the
second red mana sword?
Yeah, he's got 2 Temple Gardens and a Plains and a 4. Yeah, he does not have the mana to actually cast an explosion here, despite having 7 lands in play.
That is bizarre.
Yeah.
Well, let's see if he hits one off of Uro. He did. It's a mountain.
I've got it.
So Pyotr needs to find some action here. He's got a really good shot to do so. He's got the Scry from the Castle Vantress along with the cycle effect on the Triome.
All right, there it is. Scry 2 from Glugovsky. Yeah,
If he finds explosion, he can just kill the Uro, draw 6.
Boy, if I'm Christoph Prince, I am sweating this top, bottom. You know, what is it going to be?
Yeah. There's a Dovin's Veto, it looks like.
Brazen Borrower and Dovin's Veto.
So we're probably going to see Petty Theft rather on Uro here. Oh no, it looks like it's going to be on Teferi. Okay.
Right. Thinking I can use the Teferi I have to bounce Uro, then I'll have Dovin's Veto for when the Teferi comes back down, and I even have a replacement Teferi of my own.
Yeah, the only hope here is just hoping Christoph doesn't have a Dovin's Veto here.
Right.
Right, because now he lost his Teferi.
Right. The issue is, again, unknown to Glugovsky at this point, is that while there is one Teferi in hand that he knows about, there's 2 others.
Right.
So, you know, at some point, Christoph is going to be able to land a Teferi, it would seem.
Yeah, I mean, if Christoph draws a land, he can just play all 3 of them, so.
Right. So here's Spectral Sailor getting bounced to hand, draw a card in response, completely tapped out as Prince, but he also knows there's really nothing terrible that can happen at this point. So land go Shark Typhoon off the top for Prince.
I think first things first is trying to get that Teferi in play. Mm-hmm. And then try to work around the game that way. And you know, and Pyotr of course cannot let this resolve, as he's just going to have those counter spells rotting away in his hand.
So are we just going to see Teferi number 2 here?
Yeah, play around.
Please just say Teferi number 3.
Hey, 3rd time's the charm, right?
Double Dovin's Veto from Glugovsky. He's got to figure, like, I've done everything I can here, and Prince could just slam another Teferi Time Raveler. Now, if he doesn't think it'll be relevant, he could wait a turn to play around Mystical Dispute if he'd like.
He also sees that there's a Brazen Borrower, so maybe he doesn't want Pyotr to play it in response.
Sure, and just to have pressure on it. Yeah, that makes sense. So he's going to go for Uro and leave that 3rd Teferi in hand, but next turn we should see it.
Curious how many cards Pyotr has. Oh!
What did he hit? Oh, Expansion Explosion with a fully tapped out Christoph Prince.
That was big.
Huge rip for Glugovsky. He's just going to pass the turn back. Remember, he has Teferi Time Raveler. He doesn't have to worry about anything here.
Yeah, so now he can Explosion for 7 and still keep up 2 mana to hope to try to draw a Dovin's Veto or a Negate.
For the Teferi?
For the Teferi, yes.
Oh man, that was a nice one there for Pyotr Glugovsky. Again, his back's up against the wall. Huge swing for him with a loss here, likely out of top 8 contention, but with a win likely in the top 8. Christoph Prince is on cruise control here at 10-2.
Yeah, and this Uro is not really going to do a whole lot here. Glugovsky can choose to Explosion the Uro for 6 or just bounce it with the Brazen Borrower.
Right.
But if Christoph passes, I mean, Pyotr's just gonna draw what? 8 cards here?
Yeah, 8 cards.
Yeah. It's wild.
All right, there's Teferi Time Rattler. This is going to force the issue here. Glogowski is going to want to fire this thing off right now, ostensibly to kill the Uro, but whatever. As long as he draws all the cards, he's going to be happy.
Yeah, I mean, and he's just going full 8 here.
Look at that. He's got the Teferi. He says, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
I'll figure out how to kill your Teferi later. Thank you very much. 8 cards go into hand for Pyotr Glogowski. Fantastic.
You show remorse.
Oh my goodness. But I mean, keep in mind, Christoph can do the same thing on his turn.
True. Yeah. Glogowski, though, with Brazen Borrower, can get rid of Teferi, at least temporarily.
Yeah, and now Glogowski firmly in the driver's seat here, right? He's drawn all of the cards. He's got so many different options here. He's got the Justice Strike to deal with the Spectral Sailor if he wants to deal with that. He has the Shark Typhoon here.
You know what I'm hoping for, Paul? Just run out that Shark Typhoon, just full.
Oh, I heard you talk about that earlier.
Yeah, they never do it. It's basically always wrong.
Okay, so I mean, let's think about it here, right? I mean, if he plays it here, he can Growth Spiral and play a Teferi or maybe Justice Strike that'll give him a couple of threats.
See, I like how you're thinking here, Paul.
I mean, he's fetching with this Fabled Passage.
Oh, do it for me. Come on, Pyotr. All right, it's an Uro. Pyotr's a responsible man. He's...
Yeah. He might do it on a stream for the viewers.
Yeah, there you go.
But there's a little more on the line here. Can't just be hard casting Shark Typhoons willy-nilly.
When it's good, it's really good. It's just very rare that it's good.
Right.
All right, here comes Brazen Borrower attacking Teferi. There is Spectral Sailor that could trade if Christoph wants, but that would, of course, give up the ability to get a bunch of cards off of it. Looks like Christoph is fine with that, though, figuring, well, I got to keep Teferi around, and then I can use Explosion to get a bunch of cards anyway. This has been an absolutely fantastic mirror match between these two players. I know it can be a bit much to have to watch the same type of deck, but I have to say this is a super interesting matchup just from a strategic standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm sure Pyotr really just wishing that he had another hard counter here so that he could bounce the Teferi and counter it on the way down. Right now, we're just looking at a Mystical Dispute.
Interesting position to be in here for Prince.
Yeah, this seems like the ideal way to start here again.
I mean, you would assume it's going to get countered, right? Like, if you're Prince, you're probably like, well, this is going to get negated or vetoed right out of here because, you know, Glogowski had 7 cards in hand, but it turns out he doesn't actually have a way to deal with it here. So he fires off, interestingly, the Mystical Dispute, but Prince is like, sure, pay. And Teferi resolves once again.
And back to square one here. We have dueling Teferis, both players with a lot of cards in hand. And they both have a Shark Typhoon, too, to protect each other.
This is ridiculous.
So Glogowski has the ability to make a 4/4 flying token here. And Christoph can also make a 4/4 flying token here.
So these two players continue to go toe-to-toe. They just have the same everything.
Curious to see if he's going to go for that and just hope Glogowski doesn't fire off another huge explosion. And he is. And this is going to leave the window open again. Glogowski is the one throughout the course of this game that's been able to resolve these gigantic expansion explosions.
Yep, you're totally right. You know, Teferi does great work against Expansion Explosion, but when you take the Reclamation side out of it and you get a player tapped down like this for Prince, well, the door is open here for Glogowski. It's going to kick things off with Uro.
I wonder if is he planning on not casting here, or he might also be just figuring out how much he wants to do it for if he does it.
Right, because you always have to plan for the cards that you might draw and what you may need to play around. No, it looks like he's just going to go for Uro.
It's amazing that even at this stage in the game, I mean, we're looking at turn 15 or something here, where counting your mana is still extremely relevant, right?
It is.
Every single mana, thinking about all the different combinations of mystical disputes, how much the expansion explosion for, every single time you have to think what you can possibly do. And even at this phase in the game, you're seeing Glogowski putting in shock lands untapped.
Yep.
Because he knows like there are certain combinations of cards his opponents can have, and he wants to play around all of them.
Okay, what does Glogowski have lined up now?
I see red mana.
Just going to go for the borrower here.
Yep, maybe put some pressure on the battlefield. This will, if he goes for this and doesn't go for the play to kill Teferi, now Kristoff, right, has the ability here to go for an explosion here, maybe try to get that Teferi off the battlefield and hope to draw some answers for the Uro in play.
That's right. Yeah, the shields are down for Glogowski, although Prince doesn't necessarily know that outside of the Teferi, he could just snap off a massive expansion explosion.
I mean, at this point,
Gotta be tempting, right?
Well, with all the pressure that Glogowski is now representing, I think Kristoff has to go for it here.
So he's going to go for 6 here to kill Uro. And, of course, it's going to resolve. So look at this. 6 cards go into hand. I wonder about their libraries as well. I know Glogowski's down to about 15 cards left in his library. I mean, it doesn't really end that way ever, but they have gone pretty deep. What's that?
Chris is 1 mana short from casting that Wilderness Reclamation.
Oh my goodness, really?
Which would have been huge, which would have been able to give him the ability to cycle that Shark Typhoon end of turn 4. I'm not going to bother trying to count the lands. Let's go with like 14.
Yeah.
Seems reasonable, right? Yeah.
Oh, brutal. Yeah, it does become relevant. The reason I brought up the library size is because, you can pick which player draws the cards. So, if they do get down low enough, it could be just 1 resolved expansion explosion for, a significant, say 10 or 9 or something could just end the game on the spot without having to actually do 20 damage.
Yeah, definitely.
It doesn't really play out like that very often, though. Usually a player positions themselves finally to be able to win kind of the way that they always do. But yeah, this has been an absolutely fascinating game between these two players, really duking it out with each other. We're going to see Uro come down, put in a land, and then a Spectral Sailor is going to be there to protect Teferi, or at least try to. But again, you got to like Glogowski sitting here with the double expansion explosion in hand. Doesn't have any way to really completely turbo those out, but has tons of mana on the battlefield.
So he can explosion for 15, it looks like. I don't know if this Fabled... I don't think this Fabled Passage can get a land anymore. I'm not sure if this list has 2 forests, but not clear if this Fabled Passage can get any more lands. However, I mean, this is now Glogowski's game because he's the one who got that Teferi off the battlefield here. It looks like he's got a second forest here. And he can go for an explosion for 16, which won't be lethal.
So instead, he's going to wait? Okay. Wow. Canister maneuvered beautifully throughout the course of this game, as did Kristoff Prince, really going toe-to-toe. Neither player ever able to get significantly ahead of the other, but now one of them is. Pyotr Glogowski is way ahead at this point, and he just needs to hold on to try to get the win here. There's Wilderness Reclamation, but you see Pyotr hover over his Teferi saying, well, I've got a Teferi. What is Rek going to do here that I'm so worried about?
Yeah, and I mean, this has been a real chess match here. Look at the timer. This is one of the first times I've seen the timer go for both players here.
And somehow even that's close. They're within a minute or whatever.
The whole match has been extremely close.
Indeed.
So with this setup right now, if Christoph can't get that Teferi off the battlefield, Pyotr can simply just go end of turn, explosion you for some amount here. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, for 13, at explosion you for 10, and that'll be the game.
Yeah.
So I think at this point he has it. There's a Teferi in play. Christoph doesn't have any way to interact with that Teferi, so all Pyotr has to do is just go end of turn explosion, untap explosion, and that's gonna be it.
Yeah, he just needs him to go to the end step here where he has free reign thanks to his Teferi Time Raveler, and that's exactly where we're at right now. Glogowski in the driver's seat here. He's got 2 copies of Expansion Explosion ready to fire them off one after the other on Christoph Prince and secure his victory here.
Who needs a Wilderness Reclamation, right? I mean, look at how many lands Pyotr has in play.
Yeah, he just boarded him out.
Need it. Yeah. You can just naturally cast explosions for 15, and that'll get the job done.
Amazing work here by both players, but particularly Glogowski, able to finally get into a position where he has Teferi, his opponent does not, and now he can leverage basically having every land in his deck on the battlefield somehow. Yeah, no need to go into the double everything up mode. Just use what you've got.
Is he going to go for style points here and just try to deck Prince? Just end of
Prince
turn.
Has like 20 cards in his library. It'll work.
Yeah, is he going for this? Is he targeting Prince with both?
Yes, he is, and he's only got 18 cards in his library.
I got a Teferi play. You can't do anything.
Yep, that's exactly correct. And now he can just go to his turn, untap, fire off another explosion, and deck Christoph Prince for the win. Oh no! That is rude, Canister. Rude.
Oh man. Like, you actually have to sit there in the tank hoping your opponent doesn't have something and figuring out, man, am I going to Uro next turn? What do I want to...
Pure misery here for Christoph Prince. So again, I did mention it earlier in the match, but I wanted to reiterate that Christoph has a better record. He's 10-2 right now and could very well still make the top 8. In fact, I would say he's likely to do so, but it is Pyotr Glogowski who is going to win by decking here in round number 13 of the Players Tours Final and put himself in a position to be fantastic for top 8. In fact, it's likely that both of these players will make top 8, and if so, I'd love to see a rematch between them because I think Christoph will be out for blood. But there it is. Pyotr Glogowski picks up the match 2-1 in a very well played, super interesting mirror. Yeah, I mentioned it before. We've seen a lot of Teamer Reclamation. We've seen a lot of 4-color rec. We know about what it's about, but that was some deep, interesting play, Paul, and I'm hoping that we get to see that. Hey, if we're going to see mirrors, at least make them super fascinating like that. 2 very strong players with the deck going against each other. Ultimately, it was Pyotr Glogowski who picked up the win. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll have more here from the Players Tours Final. Don't go anywhere. If you're sitting in Li Shitian's seat, you better be happy because he picked mono red under the assumption that he was going to be facing a lot of Golos in day 2. Remember, Li didn't have to play day 1. He earned a bye, and he's got the matchup. Ramao is on Bant Golos. Li Shitian looking at casting a Tin Street Dodger to try to pile on as much damage as possible. Or does he need to use that Knight to try to take down Golos if Carlos Ramao goes for the block? This is the question that Li Shitian has to answer. And as he's decided maximum aggression, he's going to go for the Dodger.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to run out Cavalcade here as well with the mana from the Runaway Steamkin.
Woo!
And I guess
that does give him the Rimrock Knight.
He'll have one mana.
Boulder Rush.
Right, he'll have 1 mana left over to either go for Boulder Rush or make one of the Tin Street Dodgers unblockable.
Yeah. I don't see how Ramao can get out in only 1 turn cycle.
Carlos needed to have a sweeper, and even if he did, he still would have been enough. Actually, if he found a sweeper, he could have run out the Arboreal Grazer. But that's still the double cavalcade of Calamity would still trigger off the Legion Warblast, and that still would have been lethal. So
wow.
Yeah, I think this is it.
The metagame call from Li Shitian is going to pay off. He got the exact matchup that he expected here in day 2. This is why he's the only mono red player in the field, and he's into the top 8. Wow. Congratulations to Li Shitian.
Li Shitian. Oh my goodness. The only mono red player.
Look at him. He is absolutely overcome with emotion after making yet another top 8 on what is already a Hall of Fame career for Li Shitian. And welcome back to coverage here of the Players Tour Finals. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe, that's Paul Cheon, and we've got more action for you here from round number 13. A lot going out on the tournament floor. Remember, some of the players, of course, trying to make top 8, well, all of them realistically, but there's also another implication with a top 16 finish. We've got another round here, though, from round 13. This is Autumn Burchette versus Ben Whites. Ben won a prolonged game 1. Autumn, well, they picked up the win in game number 2, a little quicker, and we're going to get the decider here as we ride along with Autumn Burchette. Again, both of these players are 9-3-0. Again, hoping to find themselves in a position with a win here to draw in next round, and we'll see how it goes. As far as matchups go, Paul, it's regular teamer Reclamation in the hands of Autumn Burchette, and Ben Whites is playing 4-color Reclamation.
Yeah, and so far from the tournament, we've seen that the 4-color Reclamation deck has had the edge because of the powerful 3-mana Planeswalker into Teferi Time Raveler. But at the same time, if you want to talk about somebody who might be one of the best Reclamation players in the world, that is Autumn Burchette. They've had so much success with this deck over the course of the past few months, has been playing the deck a ton, and came out with an extremely teched out version of the deck that was specifically targeting the mirror with 4 full copies of Negate, Mystical Dispute in the main, even cards that commence the endgame, and Narset Parter of Veils.
Unwilling to play Teferi Time Raveler.
Yeah.
All right, here's Growth Spiral for both players now. And 4 mana from each, but critically the Teferi Time Raveler on the battlefield already for Ben Whites. And this is going to make life difficult potentially for Autumn. You see the Nightpack Ambusher sitting there in hand, a card you'd much rather deploy on your opponent's end step to give yourself the chance to react to other things that they may or may not be doing. But as it stands, that doesn't look like it's going to be an option. Yeah,
so now Autumn has to kind of be forced to play as Sorcery Speed. They do have the 1 Shark Typhoon. It'd be really nice if they could find a land here, because had they found a land there, they would have been able to make a 3/3 Shark Typhoon, which would have been exactly big enough to deal with a ticked up Teferi on the next turn.
Oh, sure. Yeah, really tough spot here for Ben as well. Look at Ben's hand, not doing much.
Yeah, he played the Triome, probably looking to cycle the Triome and try to rattle off a couple of relevant spells here in a row.
Right.
And Autumn might just run out a Nightpack Ambusher main phase here, because they know a Cycle Shark Typhoon is simply just not going to do it here to get rid of that Teferi.
Yeah, and you know what? This Nightpack Ambusher looks good. Like, Ben White says, sure, I have Dovin's Veto and a redundant Teferi in hand. That thing is just going to smash. There's a Wilderness Reclamation as well as another land. The only thing that Ben really has going on here, though, is the Castle Vantress, and you know, this Nightpack Ambusher is going to apply some pretty significant pressure.
Yeah, I wonder if Ben is going to just run out Reclamation here, or just choose to play out another Teferi and bounce this Nightpack Ambusher and just kind of let his hand develop a little bit further.
Buy himself some time would definitely be nice, and that does look like it's going to be the Teferi here. Not only does it get an additional card in hand, but it also sets back all of Autumn's momentum. Double Wilderness Reclamation. Boy, Ben Whites wants to see some action spells here off the top. There's Joel Rail.
Yeah,
which can be cast in conjunction with Wilderness Reclamation, but that's just fine, right? Not exactly devastating here.
Yeah, no real way to draw cards right now, so that's not great. But at the same time, Ben does have access to a ton of mana here. Of course, Nightpack Ambusher threatens to end the game very, very quickly. Mm-hmm. But we're gonna see Subscribe here with the Castle Vantress, and then Ben's got an additional follow-up Wilderness Reclamation here. Autumn, in the meantime, just wants to try to put in as much pressure as possible now, because Ben, you know, kind of has the late game here with the Reclamation in hand, with the Reclamation in play, and all this extra mana with the Castle Vantress.
That's right. Now, Autumn did find Brazen Borrower here, which they could use to, you know, guarantee getting rid of Teferi, for example. But Teferi, extremely annoying here, given look at the hand here for Autumn. I mean, they've got, all instant speed stuff, as you might guess. I think Ben is going to scry 2 here before deciding whether to chump block with Jolrael, given that Jolrael's really not doing a whole lot here.
Yeah, I think that looks like an Uro. I also think I might have seen a Teferi there. But
It was 1 top, 1 bottom, Paul, and it is Uro on top right now.
It is Uro, and Ben definitely valuing Teferi. We saw the power of Teferi Time Raveler in that last match, the marathon of a match, where we saw Peter Glogowski go against Christoph Prince, and most of that game just revolved around Teferi Time Raveler and what you could do to get it off the battlefield.
Yeah, in an interaction with Nightpack Ambusher is interesting as well, because if Autumn does decide that they'd like to take some type of action on their own turn, well, then they don't get the wolf, right? So it's kind of like you really can't have both.
Right.
As long as that Teferi's on the battlefield. So here comes Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath. And can Ben recast it from the graveyard already? That could have also been part of the math with chumping with the Jolrael. It was. That was the 7th card, actually. No cards left in graveyard after Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath comes back down again. And this is going to force the issue once again. But Autumn, with Brazen Borrower, does get to get rid of Teferi here. This is a nice spot.
Right. Well, Autumn also, end of turn, can cycle Shark Typhoon for 3, which is also a way to get Teferi Time Raveler off the battlefield. Additionally, then they can use Brazen Borrower to bounce Uro. And, I mean, really, that's a pretty huge clock for Ben to deal with.
Yeah, see, I was planning on the Petty Theft on Autumn's turn, but now you're just giving me a 3/3 Shark on top of it. I'll take it. This looks very good.
Autumn might, so Autumn right now is just going to use the Shark, get that Teferi off the battlefield, make sure the coast is clear so that the Petty Theft you can safely try to resolve. Of course, we know that Ben Whites does have a Dovin's Veto here. Probably going to use it to protect the Petty Theft here, as he doesn't really have a whole lot of resources here.
So there's the Nightpack Ambusher trigger on the stack. And Ben White's really in desperation mode here, right? I mean, this Castle Vantress 2 to the bottom, Paul. Yeah, this is really starting to get tight. Ben has really nothing going on outside of Uro, but this house of cards will fall apart very quickly if Uro is the only thing that Ben has going, as Autumn has managed to amass quite a board here. 4, 7, 10, 13 power. Hello. Not the worst.
Looks like they're considering whether or not to go for Petty Theft now. Potentially, it might be better just to go for it on their upkeep, on Ben's upkeep.
Does seem to be the play here. And I'm with you. I think Ben is going to have to use Dovin's Veto here, as Uro is really the only thing going for Ben Whites at this point. It's also kind of a 2-for-1, right?
Right. Because Autumn is basically kind of on the creature plan at this point.
Mm-hmm. Which is a good plan to be on. This 4-color Reclamation deck here for Ben Whites doesn't have a whole lot going on to deal with a board this big. It kind of just needs to go over the top, or maybe draw like Kenrith or something along those lines that can actually handle multiple creatures. But you're not going to see sweepers.
Wonder if Autumn's going to go for
outside of Solar Blaze.
Wonder if Autumn's going to go for the double block here. Get that Uro off the battlefield, even if Ben had a bounce spell to get that Nightpack Ambusher. Oh, no, never mind. Autumn only has 3 mana available. Wouldn't be able to replay it. But of course, if that Petty Theft gets countered, then he would be losing his Uro.
Boy, it is tempting, though, from Autumn's seat to throw the double block on here and leverage some of these wolves. Just because Uro feels like one of the only ways that Ben can really kind of keep going. Just going to take it. Okay. Try to race here An unconventional but interesting decision point there for Autumn Burchette.
They've got a plan here. They're going to try to outrace the Uro, and I think they were just kind of weighing the possibilities of some kind of bounce effect from Ben White's. I mean, at this point, probably just letting this Wilderness Reclamation resolve, right?
Right.
Ben has all the mana, just all of it. So, and doesn't have a whole lot of resources in terms of cards. So, it might be better to just use that negate for a potential expansion explosion or something off the top.
That does seem to be the line that Autumn has decided on as well. They have 2 copies of Expansion Explosion in hand and can't cast them. Somehow the 4-color player has all the colors. So this is Castle Vantress or bust here for Ben White's.
Ben wants just a million Shark Typhoons.
Yeah.
Commence the endgame would be nice. Oh, that is a Shark Typhoon.
That is a Shark Typhoon on top of the library, Paul.
Just floating a bunch of mana.
I guess
Probably
just
doing
Vantressing
nothing.
again. It was 1 top, 1 bottom, I think.
Yeah, could just go for it again here.
Right, just if the mana is just going to get wasted anyway.
At the same time, since he has access to so much mana, he might just want to make sure he has full information before choosing what to do with his scries.
Sure. All right, so Ben just says, go ahead. But Ben is facing down a lot of power and toughness on the other side of the battlefield. Now, the Uro attacks are negating one of those 3/3s, but everything else is coming in. And we're going to see Brazen Borrower now. And this is huge. Brazen Borrower to bounce a Nightpack Amateur and then potentially trade would be amazing. But that's the last card out of hand for Ben White's, and there is a negate.
You know what would be interesting if Autumn went for expansion here, copy Petty Theft to bounce the Uro back to Ben's hand.
Oh, that is crazy.
Unclear how many cards Ben has in his graveyard. Now, if he had, of course, 5, that wouldn't be ideal. but if Ben is looking at 2 to 3 cards in the graveyard, that would be something to consider. And you have to be scared if you're Autumn, given that Ben topped the card here with the Scry, right? He had X 4 Scries, choosing to keep a card on top. So you know it's good, right? You know it's going to be, at the very least, something like an Expansion Explosion or a Shark Typhoon.
Right.
Maybe Teferi. I don't even know if Teferi's good enough here. So I think in order for you to justify keeping something on top, it's most likely one of those 2 cards.
It's so interesting, too, because the difference between those 2 is quite big when you're staring down at a negate in your hand, right?
Yeah, exactly.
One of them you can counter and be like, I probably win the game. And the other one, well, we get to keep playing.
Yeah, this is huge.
Yeah.
This is huge from Autumn, what they choose to do here with this Petty Theft. If they're looking to play the tempo game and try to win with the ambushers and the tokens, bouncing the Uro could be an option.
Okay, Autumn ultimately says that resolves. Nightpack Amateur back into hand. Brazen Borrower on the stack to hopefully trade off with the Shark if you're sitting in Ben's seat.
Yeah,
And
but
that
at this
took
point,
a huge amount of pressure off. I mean, that wasn't just
yeah.
the Nightpack Amateur. It was also the pumps on the 2 wolves and now the Shark going away. It went from 13 damage to 4.
yeah, absolutely. This is huge. This buys Ben like two additional turns at the very least. Autumn just can't do a whole lot with these expansion explosions. I mean, they can cast it for, I guess, 3?
Yeah.
It looks like. So that's not especially impressive. And given that Ben has, I think, the better of the 2 cards that he could have kept on top, given Autumn's hand, I mean, Autumn doesn't really have a great answer for what might be a lethal Shark here next turn.
Right. Autumn's life total has fallen down to 14. Remember, they decided to take that hit last turn from the Uro. Big amount of damage, as it turns out. And this Uro looks like it's going to get ready to rumble again. I also wonder if the blast zones could get to 4 here. Now that the Nightpack Amateur is in hand, that would be tempting at least.
They don't quite have enough mana to put 3 counters here. They can put 2 counters here end of turn.
I wonder if they're both on 1 still.
I believe so.
Okay,
I don't know.
I think you're right, but sometimes there's a window where a counter gets thrown on and it sort of is just a...
That's true.
Yeah. All right, well, here comes Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath, once again smashing into the red zone, and this is for a very significant amount of damage.
No,
Down to 8.
Ben is looking really good here. Autumn's going to have 2 extremely problematic threats to deal with. Autumn needed to deal with the Uro, and additionally now has to deal with potentially a lethal shark here. I mean, this thing's going to be gigantic.
Right, and taking a look at Autumn's hand, they just don't have a way to interact at the moment. Okay, so chat points out that if Arena sees that those 2 cards are not the same as each other with regards to counters, it would spread apart. So they do both have 1 then. Thank you, Duran.
Bottom, 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 bottom.
Now, that is what you want to see if you're sitting in Autumn seat. But that one card that was top is the real problem.
I'm really curious if Ben's just going to go for an 8/8 Shark Typhoon here. It's really awkward. He has a mana floating, right? If he doesn't go for the 8/8, oh, he did. He just completely tapped out, because if he didn't, he doesn't have a lethal attack. So he's going for it here.
There it is. That's an 8/8 Shark. And taking a look at the hand of Autumn Burchette, they have no way to interact currently. Going to need to find something.
Wait, why did he go for the 8/8 if he had another Reclamation trigger? I thought he was going to float the mana, untap, and then go for it again. Okay, sure.
Well, it's the perfect amount. Hey, there's a Shark Typhoon for Autumn, so that would buy them a turn. Ooh, but Kenrith the Return King in hand for Ben White's definitely threatens lethal.
Yeah, and you know the really interesting thing about Kenrith in this matchup is you see these counter spells, right? You got Negate, you got Dovin's Vetoes, you got Ether Gust, you got Mystical Dispute. None of those cards counter Kenrith.
Right.
Kenrith can just very easily resolve in a lot of situations.
So now things get a little interesting. Commence the endgame in hand for Burchette, and I'm really curious to see if that's enough, because Kenrith plus activating the red ability puts Autumn Burchette on life support just in the air, because the 8/8 Shark will have trample. But Commence the Endgame is going to make, what, a 7/7 or something?
Yeah,
on the ground.
That won't be enough. I mean, this Kenrith should shut the door, right? I mean,
yeah, and then
it
also
gives trample.
Yeah, it gives trample, but the only creature that can actually get all the way through, right, is the shark in the air. Oh, I see. So double block Uro. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So it is plenty enough. Actually, wait, they would be at 1. Although
you can also
Kenrith could just put a +1/+1 counter on something.
Yes, Kenrith can put +1/+1 counters.
Yeah.
This is an attack for what, 19 right now? 19 trample damage?
So, yeah, if the 2 wolves go on Kenrith, and then there's a huge Commence Endgame token that blocks Uro, and then the shark goes in front of the shark, then that is 1 short of lethal. So only 1 counter needed from Ben Whites, who has, played from behind for the majority of this game and seems to have pieced together a precarious victory. And by the way, having a much bigger than 8/8 Shark would be really nice too.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm just saying that you pointed that out, Paul, but it does look like Ben White's has just enough to get over the finish line here.
Yeah, we're going to see, 6? Ben has the ability to put 2 counters on his creatures.
Sure, so or there's Expansion Explosion now with the double Wilderness Wreck.
Right, he's got it all.
He's got it all. Ben White even has Teferi Time Raveler to just seal the deal. But the easy mode here, put a +1/+1 counter on Kenrith. That's 6 in the air coming across and 2 on the ground. And Ben White wins the match 2-1 and puts himself in prime position for top 8, a hard-fought victory, to say the least. Boy, I'm sweating watching that one because of how far ahead Autumn was, and Ben was playing catch-up the whole time.
Yeah, well, that's just the power of having access to all that additional mana. Autumn was basically kind of bottlenecked to being able to play maybe one spell a turn, given that they only had like 6 lands in play. Meanwhile, Ben has 8 or 9 lands in play, 2 reclamations. He is extremely likely to just at least find a relevant spell every turn, and being able to find, of course, that Shark Typhoon was huge.
That was absolutely massive. Ben picking up the win there. Autumn with presumably a lot to fight for in the last round, hoping to hang on to a top 16 finish at the least and try to get qualified for that tournament down the line. For now, though, we're going to take a short break. We have another round to bring you before we're done for the day. When we come back, though, we'll have more. Don't go anywhere.
Javier already with a world championship under his belt, but still looking for that mythic championship title. And we are 1 match away.
That's right. Wow. Didn't go the way that he wanted there in that third game. He made it interesting with the Embercleave, but the mulligan to 5 plus the triple Ether Gust from John Emmanuel Duprat made it very unlikely for him to win it. He couldn't quite get the job done.
Yeah, it's really important to get your opponent's life total low enough where, you know, oftentimes the banned Golos deck will be able to cast their sweeper and still be alive, but you want to get them low enough to the point where then you can follow that up with a haste creature for the final few points of damage.
John Emmanuel going through the motions here, trying to find any possible way out of this mess. Javier knows he cleared a huge hurdle when John Emmanuel did not have Ether Gust in his hand, and now he's just waiting.
If he does it for 4, it's over.
It's
Javier
over,
Dominguez slams Guardian Hellkite, and that's going to be it.
Javier Dominguez sits back in his chair. All he has to do is play his mountain. He's counting
Doing
it
it
up.
now, adding
He's
it up,
100% sure. It is time to Gruul Smash. Good game at the queue here for
He's
John
getting
Emmanuel
ready.
Duprat.
Just got to slam the haster.
He's counted it up. He knows how much damage he can do this turn. There's Skargan Hellkite, everything in the red zone. And Javier Dominguez is your Mythic Championship 5 winner. Congratulations, Javier.
Embercleave. Wow.
Unbelievable stuff. It really came down to that turn, Paul, where you saw Javier look at the camera and go, please, 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 please. And when an Embercleave stuck, he had it.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to coverage of the Players Tour Finals. I'm here with Cedric Phillips. And Cedric, we are down to the last round of the tournament, and you know what that means, getting ever closer to locking in our top 8 for this event. Let's not beat about the bush. Let's look at the standings and find out where we are heading into round 14, the last round of the tournament. So here we go, and there are a few things that we do know already about our top 8. Cedric, kick it off for us.
Well, those top 2 players, Alan Wu and Patrick Fernandez, congratulations to them. They were able to draw last round. They are a lock. They are into our top 8 next weekend, but so are a couple other players as well in our 3, 4, 5, and 6. That's Kumagai, Prinz, Levy, and Michael Jacob. They are also locks in for the top 8, which means for number 7, Peter Goglowski, and number 8, Ben Whites, they are not locks, Maria, paired down and have to play some Magic this round.
That's right. Piotr and Ben just need to win, and they are in. Let's take a look now at 9th through 16th. We see some of their opponents. Piotr Glogowski will be playing Christopher Larson, currently on 9 and 4. Ben Whites will be playing Andy Baeckstrom, also on 9 and 4. Like you said, Piotr and Ben both paired down. Ben is a winning in, we believe. Piotr winning in. Christopher Larson, on the other hand, has to win and cross his fingers, and the same thing for Andrew Baeckstrom. But taking a look here at our top 16 as it sits now, remember we've got to let you know that the top 16 all qualify for the 2020 season grand finals, a huge tournament coming later this year. So that is something that these players are thinking about as well. Even if they don't make it into the top 8, they're calling this tournament a win, basically, if they get into the top 16.
As they should be.
Okay. Yeah, exactly, as they should be. And one round left here. Round 14 is a really important one. And our feature match, let's find out what it is, because there is a lot on the line for these players as we head into the final round of tournament play here in the Players Tour Finals. We are going to see Christopher Larson versus Piotr Glogowski. Remember what we said, Christopher Larson's got to win, cross his fingers and hope. Piotr Glukowski wins, and he's in. Christopher Larson playing Jund Sacrifice, only one top finish to his name, $45,000 in lifetime earnings. And this deck, Cedric, coming into this weekend, Jund Sacrifice, you know, it wasn't the best deck of the weekend. I'm not sure anybody would say that, but it certainly held its own.
Well, there's certainly value in playing decks that you know, and Larson has been playing Sacrifice strategies for quite some time now, so he just decided to run back Old Faithful. He's got his 2 copies of Bowls' Citadel, those 3 Psalms Simulacrums from Core Set 2021 is a new addition, and the base that we're very much used to seeing in Trail of Crumbs, Mayhem Devil, Woe Strider, so on and so forth. What's kind of unique about this matchup, though, Maria, is that you are playing against arguably the best Jund Sacrifice player in the world in Piotr Glukowski, though he's not playing that deck this weekend. He is playing 4-color Reclamation, so you have to imagine that for Glukowski, he's going to know how to navigate around exactly what these Jund Sacrifice decks can do, and certainly the one that Christopher Larson is playing, as we are in an open decklist tournament. So this will be a lot of fun back and forth, but there's a lot on the line here, as you mentioned. For Larson, if he wins, he's got to cross his fingers in order to make the top 8 and hope the tiebreakers go his way. If he loses, he also may have to cross his fingers a little bit about making the top 16 of this tournament. For Glukowski, it's I'd say it's a little bit more straightforward. A win into the top 8, a loss almost certainly into the top 16 unless something really weird happens. So he's going to walk away from this happy either way will canister, but we know he wants to make that top 8 just like everybody else who played in this tournament. So a win is smooth sailing, doesn't have to think about anything, and a loss is, you know, a consolation prize, and a pretty darn good one.
I've got to ask you, though, heading into this match, is there a deck that you like better in this matchup?
You know, I truthfully feel like I never have a great feel for how good Jund Sacrifice is. There are times when you have Mayhem Devil and Trail of Crumbs and everything going and the deck looks unbeatable, and other times where it flounders around and doesn't draw the right pieces. But as far as power level is concerned, 4-color Reclamation, is the more powerful of the 2 decks in my opinion, and so I got to side with Canister, not only because of his deck choice, but also because he's one of the best players in this tournament. That's no shade towards Christopher Larson, but I think if you ask Chris, you'd say, yeah, Piotr Glukowski is one of the best players in the tournament and in the world, so I go with him.
All right, well, it's time for the last round here at the Players Tour Final, so let's head to the booth.